Hi. Hi. Can you spread the word I'm here? I'm worried nobody's going to find me. Hi. I can see your comments. We're just going to do what every freedom person does. Yeah. Well, on YouTube, right? And YouTube, I can only do this if I'm adding commentary, which I was anyway. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. So, we're going to listen to this together and talk about it. Yeah. It banned me for showing pew pews. So, somebody probably reported me, of course. Hi, Tammy. Yeah, so somebody probably reported me, and of course they're gonna see pew pews. So I appealed it. I'm I'm banned. Hi Zen. I'm banned until November 22nd at 7:30. No live streaming, no gaming. So, but now I can't watch myself on YouTube. Can it just pick up on the words? Okay, I appealed it, so hopefully they'll let me back on. But we're going to continue this. Hopefully people can find me. I wonder, should I do another video? Another TikTok? I don't know how you share on YouTube. Like, I don't know, man. Okay, let's continue on. Um, After this live, I'll probably not post this one public because it's half of a live. We're just continuing on from TikTok. I'm currently live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.
Wasn't enough to convince some supporters. Vilcarsis believed police faked the bust.
She watched, so this is first-hand news, them plant guns.
She says that they planted guns?
She watched it.
Yeah.
The woman he's talking about is named Joanne Person. Olenek, Lysak, and Carbert were staying in a trailer on her property. Carbert was arrested there, and that's where police seized many of the guns. Hi, Joanne. Hi, I'm Steven. I'm with
Not
the
interested.
Fifth
Media's already told enough lies about me. I don't need any more garbage out there about me.
You know, we're hoping to hear your side because we know a lot of folks in town say that this was set up by the RCMP, and we know you were here, that you could tell us perhaps what happened.
Not interested, thanks.
This is what happens with the freedom people all the time. Like, could you imagine if in Ottawa, for example, let's just say if, in Ottawa, instead of shooing away the media when things happened or chasing them down, like at one time there Pat King chased reporters down and tried to send people after them. If they had sat down and invited all the media in, because when they had media, they would only allow like Rebel News in. They wouldn't allow any other left wing leaning, or what they say is left leaning media. I'm not saying CBC is. Um, but could you imagine if they had invited all of the media in and said something like, um, like when they had the mustache man flag. I don't know YouTube's rules, so I don't know if I have to use code language here. But the SMOTC flags, like if they had those and people were complaining about it, if they had invited all the media in and if they had sat down and said, listen, we would like everybody to know that we don't stand with those people. Those people are not with us. Those people have nothing to do with us. Our views are not the same. We don't know where that flag came from. Can you? Okay. We don't know where that flag came from. Those are not our views. That is not what we stand for. That's not our mission. we're here for this, this, and this, and if they left, roads open, like, could you imagine if they had invited in the mainstream media, and I'm doing air quotes, and disputed or at least, had some empathy to the claims that were happening, like what happened with the Michael or the Terry Fox statue and things like that. Like if they had invited the media in and just said, "We're really sorry that that happened. Um, you know, we love Terry Fox. He's a Canadian icon. We don't approve of people defacing the statue. That's not our view. We're here for a peaceful protest." And then, people go and clean up the statue. Like how would that look instead of just telling everybody to screw off like this woman did?
Inside the interview room, the men continued to insist they were run-of-the-mill protesters.
What about Chris Carbert?
Good dad, single dad, custody of the son,
Not a dangerous guy.
that I know. He's great. He's been a really good friend.
And Jerry?
He's really good.
Yeah.
It would have been so much
Same day
different.
as Guns, God's Freedom. Like,
Well, I met Big Chris at the gun shop.
where do you guys usually shoot?
Oh, we have a couple places.
One of those places was this gun shop in Lethbridge. The owner declined to speak to us, but sent us to another store nearby. It's owned by Ted Feller.
I've known the one Chris for many, many, many years when he was just actually a youngster growing up. In fact, I did take him out hunting at one time.
A picture of a young Chris Lysak hangs on Feller's wall. He says he didn't believe the charges when he first heard them.
Bought his licenses, bought his ammunition, and never, ever bought anything out of the ordinary that I thought, what the hell is he up to? Mm-hmm. The other firearm that I did see in there is what we would call an SKS.
He heard the rumor that the RCMP planted guns and says he can dispute it.
And I looked at the photoreal gun, I go, oh, I recognize that. Might even have sold him that.
Firearms of all kinds, and
I may have
body
even-
armors and so machetes. Those.
Did you hear that? I may have even sold that to him. But they were planted, right? So the other woman says they were planted, but this guy says that he may have sold them the weapons. Okay.
Are not typical items that any lawful, peaceful protester would take to the site of a protest.
Did you have any guns?
I had a non-restricted 12-gauge
Okay.
there
Okay, and where was that?
in the trailer.
So you didn't have a gun on you?
No.
You were arrested.
I had nothing.
So you just literally had a gun there.
at the
like-
trailer in my home where I
Wow.
was staying. So to defend myself.
Chris Carbert owned the trailer where some of the guns were seized.
2 mags with 223 rounds, 1 long mag with
Nodding
223
his head.
body armor,
Nodding his
2
head.
mags from armor, loose ammo from a backpack, another rifle.
So yeah, like I can guarantee you this is all wasn't in my trailer. There's no way.
Now he's saying.
Are there any guns listed here that are yours? Is there anything in here that's yours? No? You're shaking your head, so does that mean no, or?
I'm just I'm not answering.
Okay,
No, he's
all right.
not going to answer.
At that time, Carbert was
Okay.
banned from owning firearms due to a past run-in with the law. Meanwhile, the RCMP were gearing up to raid Olenik's home. On his property, they would find, built into the hillside, the entrance to a bunker.
Is there anything dangerous at your house?
I don't know.
Is there any explosive? Anything that could be explosive?
Oh yeah.
Coming up, the RCMP uncovered the conspiracies fueling these men's fear.
What's he worried
I'm
about?
probably too deep down the rabbit hole, but it scares me, right? Just from seeing all these elites doing what they're doing and stuff.
After the arrests in Coutts, police moved quickly to gather evidence. The investigation brought them to Tony Olenik's property outside Claire's home. Olenek and the others had gathered here in the months leading up to the convoy.
We've been doing it since COVID started because we knew it was all, we got to build a community. Because we don't know the outcome of what's going to happen with the collapse of the system in the society. So it's like we need to look after each other.
That's noble.
And we got to defend each other.
Yeah.
When police rolled in, they found stockpiles of supplies, gas masks, and tactical gear, guns in the bedroom, in a truck, and a gun case. In this wooden box, 2 pipe bombs. And scattered across the property, more than 36,000 rounds of ammunition.
36,000 rounds is an astronomical amount of ammunition. That's the preppers holding off the army coming their way. To stockpile that much ammunition is highly concerning. That's a lot of ammunition.
Criminologist Kelly Sundberg reviewed the police investigation. He's a former law enforcement officer and a gun enthusiast who shoots on ranges in rural Alberta.
These groups, part of their narrative growing from the online conspiracies is this belief in this civil war and that this collapse of society as we know it. This is why we see the stockpiling of arms, the survivalist, the bunkers, and the
preppers.
The preppers, yeah, we see this. This is part of their narrative.
Then on this desk, police found a journal, notes going back to the start of the pandemic, a window into Olenek's mind. In March, COVID-19, end of capitalism. May, government pushing vaccine, hope all the sheep get swept away in God's wrath when the time comes. And then by August, he's working on that bunker. On December 28th, Olenek writes the rapture is coming, a 1,000-day war against Satan or the Antichrist. God will see my efforts and sacrifice and grant me into heaven.
None of this is new. These things have been around for a while.
So just as when I'm talking about the Freedom Convoy and I'm talking about when I'm talking about them, I'm talking about the extreme convoy, right? I'm talking about these people that have weapons. But when I'm talking about churches, I'm talking about Christian nationalists. The extreme of the churches, the ones that want, women barefoot and in the kitchen and pregnant, and they want to take away their rights. They don't want them to read. They don't want them to vote. They want the 2S LGBTQIA plus community back in the closet. Like, that's extreme Christian nationalism, Christian Christo-fascism. So, when I talk about the Freedom Convoy, I'm talking about these types of people. When I'm talking about churches, I'm talking about churches that are like that, not, and, so that sort of thing, right? So these people are embedded in talking about Jesus and God, and the apocalypse is coming, and we need to remove the algorithms from these platforms, right? The algorithms that take you down the rabbit hole, where you see, once you search into something, you constantly see that thing or everything about it, and you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And it's the algorithms that take you there. I want to show you guys something after this too.
It is now popularly called Christian nationalism. All of us Christians would be embarrassed by what these groups stand for.
And in late January 1776, convoy to Coutts, a reference to the American Revolution.
Or held signs on the sidewalk
the idea
saying
that
the end is nigh.
The United States was
near.
basically born in blood, born out of a revolution, and that this would be our, maybe a precursor to our 1776.
I read and I more than I should, right? And I'm probably too deep down the rabbit hole, but it scares me, right? Just from seeing all these elites doing what they're doing and stuff. I think they're evil. I just do.
All I talk about, which is not surprising. Becomes part of their worldview, right?
Kurt Phillips has been investigating extremism in Canada for about 25 years and is now a board member of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network.
The focus is on distrust and fear of government. Ultimately, that there will be some sort of civil conflict. Many of them seem to look at the events at Coutts as kind of a precursor to that civil war.
This trucker movement is all about freedom in God. And the evil elites is all the satanic realm. And I mean, if you really dig deep into these conspiracies, these elites, that's, you know, the whole pedophile scandal that's going on with Epstein and all that. What are they hiding? What? That's why there's so much dark, deep evilness in the system that's controlling it. And they're using all of us as their little pawns in their big game here.
The RCMP tried to uncover whether the men had a plan to act on those fears.
There's no conspiring by anybody to do that.
Okay. Is there, like, and I know that, you know, sometimes emotions run high.
Yeah, and sometimes you say stupid things.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you everything that we have on wire. We've been listening to you for days and all your buddies. You say to your friend, I am trying to stop it from going to the next level because from here we go to war.
Yeah.
So that tells me, Chris, as an investigator looking and putting these pieces of puzzle together, that you knew what was coming down the pipe, but you didn't want it to happen.
Yeah, man, but so that's the whole point of this whole process, is to stop anything from ever getting to that point.
It sounds like you had your hands full there, Chris.
I don't like Trudeau. Yeah, I don't like him. I'd like to see him hang. Sure, that'd be perfect. He needs to be tried for treason and shown all the accountability that he has. And if he's proven guilty, like we know he is, hang him. And get back to how it should be.
Wow.
Olenek also explained how he thought the protest would ultimately end.
The government then will call the Insurrection Act. Because they've already thrown that word out so many times now, haven't they?
Dude, today.
And then guess what? Let me finish this.
That's right, yeah.
So then what happens is the UN comes, which is Chinese troops. And there is an imminent invasion of Chinese troops on Canadian and American soil.
Do you think the RCMP was equipped?
Did that happen? Did I miss it? Did I miss the Chinese UN coming in and taking over Canada? Did I miss that? Am I that asleep? Because those interviews were years ago. Like, that's when they were first arrested, and that was, geez, when was it's like 2020 now. Can you believe that's how much time has gone by? Wow. Yeah, but I missed it. I missed the whole Chinese taking over Canada sort of thing, right? I missed it completely.
To deal with this kind of worldview, do you think they understood it enough in that moment?
And not just the RCMP, but I think law enforcement and national security intelligence, CBSA, CSIS, the RCMP, I don't think are equipped to deal with the emerging threat that online radicalization poses to the Canadian public. This case provides a glimpse into our kind of a scary future for us, that if we don't get a handle of online self-radicalization and extremism, people's lives are at risk.
The RCMP circulated this photo after the arrests, and this vest caught the eye of extremism researchers across the country.
Wait. What do we see on the vest? What's on the vest? What is that? The same thing that was on the shirt.
There's a black and white patch, and we recognize that as belonging to the group Diagolon.
Phillips says Diagolon is a uniquely Canadian idea. Started as a joke during the pandemic, what the perfect country would look like.
The diagonal line of sanity through the continent.
Those would be the areas that were conservative, that were traditional, and would respect firearms.
But Phillips says Diagolon grew into a network of online influencers that spread a view that society was headed in the wrong direction and needed to be reset.
The belief that ultimately that they were going to have to take up arms, that there's no political solution. Well, if there's no political solution, what does that leave us, right? It leaves
Yeah, the same symbol that Daisy flew at Parliament Hill.
a violent solution.
The man behind Diagolon is Jeremy Mackenzie.
He's somebody who is incredibly charismatic.
This is outrageous. This is a travesty.
Mackenzie gained notoriety for anti-government, anti-vaccine rants. He's a 38-year-old Canadian Forces veteran from Nova Scotia.
In the media, they're calling us, what did they say, a neo-fascist accelerationist, and, scary word, scary word, scary word, scary word.
Those patches fueled speculation about the network's involvement in Coutts, something its chief influence.
Like, they say that they were born through a joke about a goat. And it may have started that way. They may have started that way. But they have gained followers and notoriety across Canada as a extremist group. And they just did a tour across Canada where people met with them, and they have their symbol. It's growing. It's a joke that's not funny anymore. It's not funny.
Answers denied.
Did the police put them there? I have absolutely no idea.
A judge allowed the Fifth Estate to view key police evidence, including this vest, with the Diagolon patches.
I'm going to shoot straight with you. I think you had to have known about them other guns because they were out in the open, and I don't know how you couldn't have.
In the house?
No, in the trailer.
Chris Lysak didn't say very much in his interview with police, but look at his shirt.
Supposed to go shoot coyotes and stuff, but
okay.
In the 2-hour interview we watched, not once did the investigator ask Lysak about the symbol on his shirt.
I don't think they dug as deeply into that as maybe they could have. Diagolon wasn't well known at this point, but it was in the news eventually. They were kind of treating it as if like a normal crime rather than something that might have been more significant.
Lysak has been repeatedly tied to Diagolon, even live streaming to their channel at Coutts.
Right now we're going to arrest you for uttering threats.
For what? You've got that many rifles. I mean, let's face it. That's a lot of coyote hunting.
Lysak's case helped boost Diagolon's profile.
I was on the phone with this lawyer, and he says, for this to happen, we need 200 grand by, what was it, 10 days or something? It was some tight, and I was like, sure, we got it. And I entirely bet that all on my faith in you guys and the strength of this community to get this done.
We're seeing Diagolon members forming active clubs, groups to get together to exercise and to train. So this group that used to say it was an online joke, a meme country, is now involved in real world, real life activities, preparing for a future in which there will be a violent encounter of some sort.
But was all the evidence going to be enough for a conviction? Coming up, why the jury had its doubts about the men's guilt, and some harsh words from the judge.
This was treated as a standard series of street-level crime.
So if I remember correctly, the jury found them actually not guilty for the weapons charges, but found them guilty on the mischief charges. And then the judge came back, and I guess he looked at the evidence, and the jury's verdict did not go through, and the judge sentenced them for weapons. I mean, if I remember correctly. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that's what happened.
Because of that, they've gotten away fairly lightly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In Lethbridge, with 4 men behind bars, the case dragged on for over 2 years. Their supporters remained defiant, even as the men faced spending over a decade in prison if convicted.
So the court case took over 2 years. I still think it took too long, in my opinion, but some of them were their own worst enemies. Like, some of them fired lawyers, some of them wanted to self-represent. they didn't trust the lawyers or the system, so they wanted to take care of it themselves. So, yeah, that's why it took so long. But I still even think it took way too long, even with that going on, in my opinion.
Certain people had this view that we could, within a year's or a half year's time, be forced to take extraordinary measures to get our daily needs. So these men were prepared to resist further than others were.
As the allegations were put to the test, an early sign the evidence wasn't going to add up to a conviction. The Crown dropped the conspiracy to murder charge against 2 of the men.
The big news today is that, thank goodness, Chris is going to be released, Lysak, and I guess Jerry Morin as well.
Not to be confused
Jerry
with
Morin
Joe
took
Morin.
a plea deal last winter, admitting he was guilty of conspiring to traffic firearms at the Coutts blockade. Chris Lysak also took a deal, pleading guilty to a lesser charge. He was convicted of possessing a restricted firearm in an unauthorized place. He had a handgun with a round in the chamber. Celebrating his release, leaders of Diagolon.
In Lysak's case, he's in pictures with me, and he's involved with a lot of you guys in a friendly capacity, and was a fan of a podcast.
Both Lysak and Morin were sentenced to 3 years, equal to their time served. Tony Olenek and Chris Carbert's case did proceed to trial. The jury ultimately didn't see everything we've shown you. They did review dozens of exhibits, including tactical vests and medical kits. They heard from 33 witnesses and watched Olenek's interview with police.
We're just trying to be protectors, just in case, because we've seen it all over the world, Andy. Like, law enforcement and governments can do bad things, and we're just there to protect. That's it.
It all came down to the key question: did the men have a plan to attack? The jury was not convinced that they did, and so they found Carbert and Olenek not guilty of conspiring to kill RCMP officers.
Right.
I can see where there's reasonable doubt. Not a lot, but there's reasonable doubt. When we have individuals who are caught up in this fervor, this rage, this fear that's driven by absolute nonsensical beliefs, but they believe it, at what point does that trigger the courts to take a judicial action against these individuals?
The jury did find Olenek and Carbert guilty of possessing firearms dangerous to the public peace, as well as mischief. Olenek was also convicted of having illegally possessed pipe bombs at his home.
It gets to the line when you start arming up and actually demonstrating the intent to do harm, when you have pipe bombs, when you have assault rifles and body armor and you're prepping. It's a very fine line.
Justice David Lebrenz oversaw the trial. He found the men were prepared for a firefight with police. But the operative question was, at what point would they engage?
The ambiguity surrounding the threshold that they would be prepared to repel the police helped their case.
Yeah, that's a good
But there
point.
is no doubt that they were ready, they were prepared, they were willing, and they were able to engage.
That's the problem, right? The right has money. I'm going to put that back up. The right has money behind them, and it's not just these. Oops. Paranoia. Ah! It's not just these things. Their media, like their influencers, have millions behind them, whereas other influencers like JB, David Pacman, all the left-wing ones don't have the funds. Like Rebel News, all of these people get tons of money from somewhere, and we did find out that Tenet Media did get money from Russia. I don't know if their sources have dried up, but right-wing people will load money into anything. That's right, Joe. there's money in hate. That's absolutely correct. Money and hate and fear. And that's going to be a huge issue for us, like for people who are on the left, for people who want to get the word out and try to bring these people back from the brink of whatever algorithm they followed, whatever rabbit hole they went down. If left-wingers don't start getting together and putting money together and bringing this to light, yeah, that's why they're always so broke. There could be a problem in the future. I'm going to play another video after
Police
this.
in a shootout. And clearly the judge had a profound appreciation for the situation. And the judge's exact words were, this was an exceedingly dangerous situation. I believe a different jury might have reached a different conclusion with the same set of facts.
The Crown and defense have appealed the verdict. The day of sentencing, Olenek and Carbert hoped they would be released. Their lawyers asked for time served, while the Crown argued for 9 years. Instead, the judge sentenced them to 6.5 years and banned them for life from owning firearms.
He considered the danger to the police to be high. I would disagree with that, but that's his decision. The sentence is excessive with strong political features, and it will be appealed.
What I took from the judge's reasons is that the sentence was so high in order to send a message to the public, you can't do this. And I don't quarrel with the fact that you shouldn't have guns at a protest and that the judge was appropriate in sending that message. But in terms of the actual harm done as opposed to what could have been done, I think that those are two different things.
What?
Justice LeBren said in his sentence,
What is she talking about? What could have been done if the police hadn't intervened, and if the leader, the gentleman who showed first, I'm pretty sure he's the one, because as soon as this protest found out about these guys having these weapons, sorry, I'm just worried about getting kicked off YouTube too, because I lost my appeal, by the way. I can't go back. I'm banned from doing lives until November 22nd because there was guns in the video. What was I saying? So she's saying that, like, if the police hadn't intervened, this would have been so much worse. Like, they would have followed through with what they were doing. It would have become violent, right? The gentleman who says he's the leader, they called off the protest the minute they found out these details, and that's where you see the video of the police officers shaking hands with them as they're leaving, because they couldn't believe that somebody would threaten police officers like this.
Decision that Carbert and Olenek had intentionally armed themselves for political reasons.
They did.
He called their claim of self-defense against the police nebulous and fanciful. While their appeal is awaiting consideration, Carbert and Olenek are serving their time in the Badlands of Alberta at the medium security prison, the Drumheller Institution. They were given credit for the time served in custody and have 2 years left on their sentence.
The one thing I think I got from it is that these are people who are, again, obviously true believers. These are people who no amount of time in jail is going to change that. They can't think of themselves as being criminals, and neither can their supporters. These are good, godly family men who are just doing what they're doing to protect them.
I conclude that these are extremely privileged individuals.
Yes.
They got away very lightly and should consider themselves extremely fortunate. I rest my case.
The Fifth Estate requested interviews with all 4 men and their lawyers. They all declined.
Who's going to make the next play? What's the government going to do? They know that more and more Canadians in the world is waking up to what they were doing and what their intent was. And I believe truly that if they keep pushing, that rising will come again.
Why do you consider them heroes?
Because they were willing to fight for our freedoms.
It's something that isn't going to go away anytime soon. The community that was developed as a result of this, they're still agitated, they're still angry, they're still looking for change, and in their mind, prosecuting those that have done them wrong.
I don't think this case.
The last time I saw Ron Clark, he was in the U.S. and he was, before he went, he had said something like wanting to monitor the elections, but as he was going, he kind of laid off on that. But then he went to Springfield. You know, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. So I think he went to Springfield to find out the truth. I should check in with Ron.
Solidifies anything by any stretch.
Yeah. So did Bundy's ranch. So did Timothy.
But it sure does show us that any future case is going to be incredibly difficult. There needs to be more preparation because this isn't going to be the last time.
The convoy still evokes strong feelings in Coutts, and while he's no longer mayor, Jim Willett hopes what happened here offers a lesson to Canadians.
I believe this should have woken up some of the people that thought they understood what was going on. We tend to ignore people that we don't want to listen to. We tend to just brush them off and say, well, they're just a bunch of nuts. And that's a hazard for both sides.
I want to see if I can find this other video that I want to show you. Why is that on there? Oops. Give me 2 seconds. I want to show you this other video. Why is that not taking me to? Let's see if I can just find this. Here she is. Holy loud. Stop it. Stop. Why are you doing that? The camera's blocking the... Watch this. How long is this? I don't think it was very long. It's only 13 minutes. We'll watch this together. Yeah, the crane was, yeah. I think they had that, or was that the crane that was, I think that's the crane that was for the axe, the tax.
I'm going to talk about a threat that most people don't want to think about. It's too frightening, and it doesn't seem real. That threat is civil war. Since 1946, over 250 civil wars have broken out, and that number continues to increase. There are now almost 50% more civil wars than there were in 2001. I've been studying civil wars for over 30 years. I've interviewed members of Hamas in the West Bank, ex-Sinn Féin members in Northern Ireland, former members of the FARC in Colombia. I've stood on top of the Golan Heights and stared into Syria at the top of the Syrian civil war. I've driven across Zimbabwe as the military was planning its coup against Robert Mugabe. I've been followed and interrogated by members of Myanmar's junta. In 2017, I was asked to serve on a task force run by the CIA called the Political Instability Task Force. One of the goals of that task force was to come up with a model to help the US government predict what countries around the world were likely to experience ethnic conflict and civil war. It turns out that predicting civil war is possible. Solid data exists on where and when these conflicts are likely to break out. It's just that most people don't know that. The task force was comprised of two types of people, experts on civil war like myself and data analysts. The experts came up with 38 different factors that they thought could potentially lead a country towards civil war. And some of those factors seemed obvious, like whether a country was poor, had lots of income inequality, or had a government that heavily discriminated against one particular group. It turns out that only two factors were highly predictive, and they weren't the ones the experts expected. The first was whether a country was an anocracy. Anocracy is just a fancy term for partial democracy. It's a government that's neither fully democratic nor fully autocratic. It's something in between. So think about Hungary today. Hungary holds elections. Hungarians eagerly go out and vote. It's just that whoever wins those elections can basically do whatever they want. The second factor was whether citizens in these anocracies had formed political parties around identity rather than ideology. So rather than joining a party because you were liberal or conservative, capitalist or communist, you joined a party because you were black or white, Christian or Muslim, Serb or Croat. If a country had these two features, the task force considered it at high risk of political violence and put it on a watch list. It was actually called the watch list, and it was sent to the White House. So here I was sitting in a hotel conference room in suburban Virginia 4 times a year with a room full of really smart people. And we talked about countries in Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, but we never, ever talked about the United States. That's because the CIA is legally not allowed to monitor the United States or its citizens, and that's exactly the way it should be. But I was a private citizen, and I had this information.
And we are private citizens, and we have this information, and we're trying to get it out there. We have to get it out to people. We have to start spreading the word that these algorithms on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook, they're dangerous. It's not even the people. It's the algorithms, man. Anyways, keep listening to her. She makes complete sense. This is not fear-mongering. I mean, civil war, there's a chance, but there's also a chance that we could turn it around. Like we have a chance to get the word out, right? And, this makes complete sense.
And I could see that both of these factors were emerging in my own country, and they were emerging at a surprisingly fast rate. The U.S.'s democracy has been downgraded 3 times since 2016. 2016, it was downgraded because international election monitors had considered the 2016 election free, but not entirely fair. America's own intelligence agencies had found that the Russians had, in fact, meddled in that election. It was downgraded again in 2019 when the White
Yeah, I'll put this TED Talk, I'll put the link in the description below. Thank you for the pointer there, Zen. Because I think it's really good for everybody to listen to what she's saying here. Because right now, she goes in to say that, just listen and then I'll interrupt her when she gets there.
White House refused to comply with requests by Congress for information. And it was downgraded a final time at the end of 2020 when President Trump refused to accept his loss in the 2020 election and actively attempted to overturn the results. Between December of 2020 and early 2021, the United States was officially classified as an anocracy. If the task force had been allowed to monitor and study the United States, It likely would have considered it at high risk of political instability and political violence in December of 2020, just a few weeks before the January 6th insurrection, and it likely would have put the United States on the watch list. We also know who tends to start civil wars, and again, it's not the people most of us think. It is not the poorest people in society. It is not the people who are most oppressed by their government. The people who tend to start civil wars, especially ethnically based civil wars, are the groups that had once been politically dominant but are in decline.
So how, like all over TikTok and everywhere that I'm looking, I am seeing white people, white men, saying that they are now the oppressed. They are now the ones who are being erased. They are the ones that are now being discriminated against and being people are being a racist against them. I'm repeating this. This is not my views, just so everybody if people on YouTube don't know me, these are not my views. These are just things that are being repeated, and I hear it and I see it every day on TikTok, and I watch this and I was like, wow. The men who were dominant before are now feeling oppressed, and those are the ones that are likely to start because they want their power back. You know?
If you think back to the former Yugoslavia, Serbs had enjoyed most of the positions in government and the military throughout the Cold War for decades. But they were the ones who stood to lose the most as Yugoslavia democratized. The Serbs started that war. Iraq's Sunnis similarly enjoyed most of the key positions in the military and in government under Saddam Hussein. But when the United States toppled Saddam Hussein, they also threw the Sunnis out of their positions. It was the Sunnis who started that war. In the United States, the rise of militias has been driven primarily by white men who see America's identity changing in ways that directly threatens their status. They were the ones who marched on the Capitol on January 6th.
And they were predominantly the ones that blocked the borders, that went to Ottawa. Predominantly, not entirely, but the majority. And the majority of them were screaming that, like Pat King, he said, "This is the, what did he say? This is the, what did he say? This is the something of the human, the Anglo-Saxon race. This is the, he was talking about the Anglo-Saxon race being erased, really. And that's what we saw a lot of. And that's what I'm seeing a lot now on TikTok, even just regular people, women even.
Why is this happening now? It's happening now because of demographic change. The United States is in the midst of a major transition from a country whose population is majority white to a country whose population will be majority non-white. The United States will be the first country to go through this, but others are going to follow. Canada is likely to be next, followed by New Zealand, and then the UK, and eventually all the English-speaking countries of the world. This is likely to be especially true if climate change causes citizens from the global south to increasingly move north. These countries are going to be looking to the United States to see how we manage this demographic shift. Americans can allow this transition to tear us apart, or we could use it to come together to show the world how to manage this change, and in the process create a truly multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy. So how do you do this? The first thing we have to do is address the two big risk factors of civil war: anocracy and identity politics. To address anocracy, we have to improve the rule of law. We have to ensure equal access to every citizen to the vote. We have to reduce corruption, and we have to improve the quality of government services. But reforming a government takes time. Those are not easy things to do, and it often seems impossible. That's exactly where the United States is today, almost paralyzed. This is where business can come in. 30 years ago, most of us thought that South Africa was barreling towards civil war. Black South Africans were increasingly protesting the brutality of the white apartheid regime, and the government responded with more brutality. But then something happened. The business community stepped in and demanded real democracy. They did this because they had been suffering under years of crushing economic sanctions. And eventually they had to choose between apartheid and profits, and they chose profits. And when they went to the government and said, "We will no longer support you," the apartheid regime knew it could not survive, and reform happened quickly. The business community can also help address identity politics by investing in those communities that have been left behind by globalization and by free trade agreements like NAFTA. In the United States, it was the working class that disproportionately suffered. Those are the communities that are the most...
Oh no? What happened? Oh no, what? What? Tell me, Zen, tell me. Type faster. Just kidding. Yeah, it's a TED Talk. Is that bad? It totally makes sense, though, to me. Like this whole... It's what's happening right now. And this was... What was the date on this? I'll have to look.
Most angry,
I think it was like a year ago.
And the most resentful today. Businesses can invest in better health care, better education, and a higher minimum wage so that they create a group of people who are hopeful